Hey, I made this video here to share with everyone how I passed the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner Exam. If you look at the results here, I scored 914 points based on a scaled score between 100 and 1,000. And what this means is, if you look at my score 914, you would think that maybe divide 914 by 1,000, you get the percentage, and that tells you the number of questions that I got correctly. But skill scoring that's not how that works. If you go to the AWS website, it'll explain to you what skill scoring is. And I'm gonna go ahead and turn to this website here. It says skill scoring is commonly used when there are multiple sets of questions or forms for the exam. Different candidates may test on different forms when completing their exams. So if you look down here, there's an example of two users that took the exam. One user may have been giving questions from a form A, and the other one was giving questions from a form B. And if you notice, the score 751 is highlighted in yellow for both of the candidates. But if you look at form A, in order to get score of 751, they would have to answer 32 questions correctly. At form B, they would have to answer 30 questions in order to get the same score, and that's because one form may have more difficult questions. So that's what skill scoring is about. And so if we go back to my score here, I got 914 points based on a skill scoring. Now I will tell you that it took me about a couple days to prepare for the exam. And if you're watching this, don't assume that it's going to take you a couple days to prepare, because I have several years of experience with AWS. I have 2 other certifications with AWS, and I'm pretty familiar with the types of questions that are asked. The questions that are asked are scenario based, and this is not my first time taking a AWS certification exam. So one of the first things that I did to see if I was ready to take the exam was I went over to the section here on the AWS website for preparing for this exam, and I downloaded the sample questions. And if we look at here, there's about 10 questions or so, and then at the end of the PDF you have all the answers. So what I did first is I try to answer all the questions without looking at the answers, and I believe I got most, if not all, right. And those are only 10 questions, so you can't just go by 10 questions, but I figured I got most of them, if not all, correctly. I think I should be able to take the exam. And then I also took a practice exam, and I think I scored like a 90, and there must have been like 60 questions or 30 questions on that exam. And based off of that, I figured that I was ready to go. So I went ahead and I scheduled my exam, and I looked up some information that really helped me when I took the exam. And so I took the exam from my house. It was a proctored exam, and I had another, I believe it was like a third-party company that was logged into my screen, and it took me maybe about 30 minutes to get my camera situated. They wanted to see what was underneath the desk, in the ceiling. They wanted me to move the camera all around the room, and they had me move from one desk to another desk. So they were really strict, and they really wanted to make sure that you weren't cheating. They had me put the camera in my ears, around my ears, and they really wanted to make sure that you had no cheating sources and no access to your phone. So one of the things that I can tell you, if you want to get ready for the exam is make sure that you understand the shared responsibility. As we look here at question 5, which of the following is an AWS responsibility under the AWS Shared Responsibility model? You want to really understand when you get asked a question like this, whose responsibility is it? Is it AWS responsibility or is it the customer responsibility? Because you're going to get asked several different questions and you really need to understand that. The second thing you need to know is pricing. You need to know the difference between spot instances versus on-demand pricing versus reservation pricing. And you're going to get asked several questions on the exam, so you really need to know that. And one of the other things that you need to know as well is the differences between the support plans. You have the developer support plan, you have the business support plan, you have the enterprise support plan, and you're going to get asked questions about these support plans. And if you study those main 3 things, you'll be able to answer most of the questions, but that's still not going to be enough to pass the exam. You also need to know other things, such as the VPC. As we see here, we have questions on VPC, virtual private cloud. You need to understand availability zones, regions. You need to understand edge locations. You need to understand what S3 does. So you kind of need to have an understanding of other services that you use. I know some questions that I was asked was regarding RDS, and you need to understand that RDS is a managed service, which means that you don't have to manage the servers. So if you're a company that's hosting your databases on premise and you want to migrate over to the cloud, well, migrating to the cloud can be good for you if you don't want to maintain the servers that will be hosting the databases. So you can use RDS in that case if you don't want to handle the updates for the servers and handle the maintenance for the databases. All you're responsible for is making sure that you have your RDS settings locked down and that you can connect to it. So you really need to understand several more things than just those main 3 things that I mentioned. One of the things too that I created to be able to help other people out was on my website here on cloudexaminer.com. I have an assessment that I created using Google Docs, and the assessment is about I would say about 20 questions, and really I think these are some good questions to assess your knowledge before you take the exam. And if you click on the first question here, where you have to fill out all the questions here, at the end there's feedback on the questions that you got wrong or right. So I would encourage you to go to the link and submit your answers and read the feedback that's given. And this way it will help you assess to see if you're ready to take the exam. Like I said, I have 2 other exams under my belt that I passed, and if I was to go back and do it again, I would definitely take this exam first. Now, I have a developer background, and I also have a networking background, but I would take this exam first, and the reason why is because it's easier than the other exams, so it's going to take less time. And as soon as you pass the exam, it's a motivation to go after the other exams. And it'll also get you familiar with the types of questions that are asked. And you'll be able to see that AWS uses scenario-based questions. So that'll get you familiar and get your feet wet with some of the content in the questions. And also too, you'll be able to get a 50% discount on your next certification. So that's really helpful too. So I would recommend that you go to my website and click on this Cloud Practitioner Assessment to help you out. So hopefully, my experience would be able to help somebody else out. And if I left anything else, or if you have any questions, just feel free to do that in the comments.